What is going on, everyone? Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture, and today we have another video discussing slabbed comic books. This one we're asking the question, is it worth it to crack open my slab and resubmit it to CGC or CBCS? All right. Before we get into the video, because I know a lot of people are asking this question, big shout out to all my patrons because this was a question that some of you guys have brought up as well. But before we get into it, if you aren't subscribed to the channel, please take some time to do so. Check out all the awesome links below in the description. See how you can help support the channel by becoming a Patreon member of the channel via the link below, or by clicking that join button to become a YouTube channel member. Of course, I got my link to my official Journals Comics merch and the link to our comic book canon YouTube. Go subscribe to us. We have live shows every Friday night. I do want to let everyone know too, I have my link and my discount code to BCW Supplies, where you can use the discount code Journos and get 10% off your orders. This isn't just a one-time code or a limited time thing. You can use the code Journos off of any order from BCW's website at any time. It does not expire. So, you know, if you're looking for some boxes, for bags, boards, whatever it may be, like I've always said before, I have always supported BCW, and I'm very happy to have this sponsorship with them right now that can help you all save some money off of your comic book supplies. So remember to click that BCW link that's below at checkout. Use the discount code Journos to get 10% off your order. All right, everyone. Should we crack open slabs? Should we crack open slabs? Well, you first got to ask yourself, what's the point of cracking open a slab? Well, some people will tell you that they do it because they can't stand slab books and they want that book raw. But that's not what we're going to be talking about today. The main reason that people want to crack open a slab book and send it back into CGC, CBCS, whatever the case may be, is because they're hoping to bump that grade up. All right, so we know that this book is on fire right now. It is through the roof, and this is an 8.5, right? So I might sit here and say, man, this book looks clean. There's no color breaking spine ticks. I bet I could crack this book open, give it a press and clean, and send it back into CGC to bump that grade up to at least a 9.0. All right, so should we be doing this? And you have to really ask yourself a handful of questions, all right? The first thing I need to tell everyone, though, about doing this is that you're always going to be taking a risk. The first thing you need to understand is that, yes, grading is subjective. And because we don't understand or see publicly the actual details to the grading processes, the level and the margin of error for subjectivity with these grades is very wide, very wide. I've seen 9.8s. I've seen books with spine ticks come back 9.8s. I've seen books that look like 9.6 come back 8.5s. That's a whole other video and argument getting down into that rabbit hole. But you have to have that in mind. You have to understand that there's always a risk simply because of the subjectivity of the grade itself, who's grading it on that specific day, and so forth. All right? You're never guaranteed a higher grade. Here's another question that you need to ask yourself before you crack open a slab and spend money to get it pressed and clean and sent back in to get graded. You got to ask yourself, do you notice with your eye any pressable defects? Okay, what's a pressable defect? Outside of some awesome YouTubers with an awesome YouTube channel. Big shout out to Pressable Defects and crew. Pressable defects are defects that are in a book that most likely can come out with a clean and a press. Here's an example. Pressable defects is a wave in a book cover. You know, you might see some waviness in a book cover. That's a pressable defect. A slight bend that doesn't break color. That could be a pressable defect. A spine stress or a spine tick that doesn't break color. That could be a pressable defect. What is not a pressable defect? Well, anything that breaks color. You could have a bend that breaks color, and you may be able to press out the bend, but you're still going to see that color breaking crease there. Nothing's going to fix that whatsoever. Same with color breaking spine ticks. What else is an pressable defect? Rounding of an edge, blunting of a corner, things like that. Color loss. There's also defects that can come out with a clean. You may have some dirt residue on a cover, and I've done this in videos as well, where I show you guys how to clean before a press. Maybe you have a white cover that has some dinge to it. You can find some techniques to clean that up and get that dinge really cleaned up. Maybe you have other type of substance that's actually stuck to the cover or a part of the book that you can actually get up without ruining the book. That's a defect that can be taken out with a clean. So you don't want a book that's in an 8.5, right? And there's noticeable non-pressable defects, color breaks and bands and stuff that color break, fading of the book, discoloration, extreme blending of the corners and rounding of the edges, and say, oh, well, I can, get this a clean and a press and get a better grade. Most likely, a clean and a press isn't going to help it too much if it has notable defects that cannot be cleaned or pressed out. So that is key to your decision making. Once you gauge if a book has either pressable defects or non-pressable defects, then you go into the next step. All right. What is the current grade, and what margin of increase, should we say, do I feel that I have with this book? So is the book an 8.5, right? Or maybe the book's a 9.6 and it's very, very close to getting that 9.8 grade. So you might have a better chance of getting a 9.6 bumped up to a 9.8. Maybe you do have an 8.5. Now, are you trying to bump up an 8.5 to a 9.8? Obviously, that's going to be harder to do. So you have to set realistic expectations. If I cracked this slab, paid to get it pressed and cleaned, most people are going to pay. I could do it myself, but if you could do it yourself, you could save some money. But most people, you're going to pay to get it pressed and cleaned, right? Because more than not, you're not going to want to crack open a slab and send it into CGC and try to get it regraded without getting it pressed and clean. That would be counterproductive. You're going to pay to get it pressed and clean, and then you're going to pay for the CGC or the CBCS or the grading service again. You're going to pay for the shipping. You're going to pay for the slab costs and the service fees and all that, and then the return shipping. Is it worth it to say, I'm going to try to just get a 9.0? That's worth it for me. So what do you have to do there? You have to understand your margin of bump. Are you willing to just go one grade bump up? Is it a 5.0 that you're trying to get a 5.5 or a 6.0? Is it an 8.5 that you'd be good with a 9.0? Or is it a 9.4 or 9.6 that you're trying to bump up to a 9.8? Be confident in your margin of bump. Now, the next question you ask yourself, if you are concerned or if you care about the value of the book, you have to ask yourself, is it going to be worth it? So if I am confident that I could spend $50 to get it pressed and clean, and then 30 something dollars to send it back to CGC and get it graded again. If I'm confident that I could spend anywhere from like $80 to $100 to send this book back in, that if I get it back a 9.0, is it going to be worth it value wise? So you know what you need to study up on and do your research on? Fair market value. Know the fair market value of the grade that it's currently at. Know the fair market value of the grade that you think that you can achieve by getting it resubmitted. And then ask yourself, if I'm spending X amount of dollars to go do that, is my jump in profit margin going to be worth it? So hypothetically, I don't know the fair market values off top, but I think an 8.5 right now of this book is sitting at about $800, if I'm not mistaken. So say hypothetically that the fair market value of an 8.5 right now is at $800. Say a fair market value for a 9.0 is $1,000. All right. Is it worth it? That's a $200 bump in return on investment. Okay. If you're spending $80 to send this book in, your difference in profit margin would be roughly $120. Is it worth it to take that chance for a $120 profit margin difference? Because going back to the first thing I said, you have to know that it's always a risk. This book, even with the press and clean, can come back in 8.5 again. Or it could come back in 8.0 or maybe even a 7.5. That's the reality of the situation. I've seen books that were like 9.4s and 9.6s that were sent out to get pressed and cleaned, and they came back lower than before. 9.2s, 9.0s, and even some 8.5s. That's the wide margin of error for the subjectivity of the grading process. So, here's the thing. Maybe if you have a 9.6, that's worth, take a Ultimate Fallout number 4 where an 9.8 is worth, it's still hovering around that 3,000 mark. I know some of them have sold for a little under. It's kind of cooled off slightly because it was peaking above. But say, roughly that your UF4 is still roughly at about a $3,000 fair market value in a 9.8. And saying a 9.6, it's sitting at about $1,600. All right. You might be willing to spend $100 or so to get it pressed and clean, $80, $100 to get it pressed and clean, sent back to CGC, hoping to get that 9.8, because you can almost double. You can almost double your value. But what if it comes back a 9.4? If it comes back a 9.6 and you spent the $80 to $100, maybe you can live with that, putting a little bit of money out. But what if it comes back a 9.4? And what if a 9.4 fair market value is $1,200 and you lost roughly $400 or $500 in fair market value? There's always a risk. Here's the thing. If you want to ask me personally, I would only do it. If I was extremely confident in all the questions that I asked and I paid way under the fair market value for that book. Okay? So say, first off, if I got a raw book, and I want to send it off to a grading company, I'm going to make sure I press and clean it and get it up to par to where I need to be before I even send it off. And once I send it off, whatever grade that I get, I'm not going to send it back in. I'm not going to be one of those that sends it in, doesn't get the grade I want, spends money to press and clean it again and send it back in. Nope. If I think a book could get a 9.8 and I press and clean it and I send it off and it comes back a 9.6, it's staying in that slab. But if I'm able to buy an already slab book on the secondary market for way under fair market value, and I think it would be worth it because I'm confident in the pressable defects, I'm confident that it could get bumped up at least one grade, I may be willing to take that risk. And even if it comes back, say, a lower grade, because I got it at such a low fair market value, I may still be okay with taking that gamble. Because at least if I ever sold it, or I know that the value of that book is still higher than what I paid, right? So, ultimately, I am not a fan of the cracking and resubmitting simply because I do not trust the grading process of these companies. Not just CGC, but all the top dogs. I don't trust it. I don't trust the subjectivity of the grading standards in the grading system. Like I said, unless I can clearly see that a book has never been pressed and cleaned, and I am extremely confident that it would be very, very hard for that book to come back lower than it was. But sometimes I'm surprised. I am absolutely surprised. So that's my video for today, everyone. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you agree with the talking points and the questions that you have to ask yourself before making this type of decision. Are you somebody that likes to take the risk and is willing to spend the money to get your books cracked, pressed and cleaned, and resubmitted to get reslabbed, hoping for that higher grade? Or are you good with not taking that risk? Let me know in the comments below. Again, if you aren't subscribed to the channel, please take some time to do so. Thank you all for watching. Be well, and until next time.